So I'm back at you again from the sometimes a little bit spooky Oaxacan cloud forest. And today I wanted to talk to you about why you should consider buying a younger forest. If you are looking to buy a woodlot, you're probably going to want to look for something with larger timber. And why wouldn't you? Everyone wants big wood. You know, whether it's for aesthetic reasons, you just want something pretty, or for financial reasons, the larger the timber you buy, the more quickly you can recover some of your costs from buying the land. But you shouldn't ignore those cutover parcels with very small saplings or pole-sized timber. And to explain why, I want to introduce a hunting analogy. So when you're out there hunting, would you rather take a shot at a deer from 30 yards or 300 yards? Obviously 30 yards. Why? Because you're less likely to miss. But why exactly are you less likely to miss? Because you don't practice enough. But other than that, it's because every small movement you take at 300 yards is going to have an exponentially dramatic result on where that bullet actually lands. So when you're aiming out to 300 yards, just the wrong pull of the trigger could move the bullet, 20 feet in either direction. Whereas if you're shooting at 30 yards, it doesn't really matter how you pull the trigger, you're probably gonna hit the deer, unless you really mess up your trigger pull somehow. So the farther we are out to a target, the more every little movement here where we're currently standing matters. And it's the same with forests and forest growth. The farther out we are from the date of maturity, when the timber actually grows, the more of an ability we have to impact the final outcome of the forest, the trajectory of growth. Now, there are many functions by which this happens. The first is, of course, just simply mathematical, the same as shooting a gun. We're talking about, when we're talking about the growth of an investment, we're talking about percent. Percent means per 100. The more 100 increments you have, the more two different percentages are going to diverge from each other. So let's say you have 2% and 3%. If you have a 3% trajectory, then for every 100, it's going to move, 3. If you have 2, then 2. So the more 100 increments you add, the more these two lines are going to diverge apart, and we can actually graph that pretty simply. Now, all the other mechanisms are silvicultural, and this is where you get the best bang for your buck. So, for example, when a stand is young, you have a very high TPA count, that is trees per acre. As a stand gets older, its trees per acre count starts to drop because trees are competing with each other, and you're just going to have a lot of mortality in the stand until you come out with your final stand. If you have a younger forest, you can select from a larger selection of stems and species, so you can have a greater effect on what the outcome is going to be. You can determine essentially the species composition to an extent of your forest. And the other effects come from stem form and how trees grow. So from the earlier example, we had the trees per acre count, and I said the trees are competing with each other. Well, this is going to have a certain effect on the form of the trees. In some cases, it's good. So if you have quality hardwoods, you kind of want the trees competing with each other to a certain extent because it keeps them branch free. But with softwoods, that really is going to kill your value. It's going to cannibalize the crowns. You're going to have what would be called a low height to diameter ratio, and that's going to have a poor effect on how quickly you can thin the stand, if you can thin the stand at all, and the overall returns of your forest. So the younger your forest is, the more you can influence its trajectory of growth. And this has another implication. When you're buying younger forests, there's more opportunity for arbitrage. And actually, to kind of exemplify this, I'm going to tell a story about my career. When I was first out of college, and in college, because I worked during the summers, I was extraordinarily fascinated with what would be called timber stand improvement programs, which is essentially when you're going in and doing these improvement projects to younger stands of wood. It was something I really loved and still do. And that kind of made me unique among foresters. Most foresters really wanted to be in those stands of large wood. And the reason was, there's a few reasons. Partially it was because there's an immediate payoff. You can go into a very nice stand of wood and you will come out with a very nice stand of wood. And what I mean by that is if your trees are sufficiently large enough, it doesn't matter, what you do for a logging operation, it's probably going to look beautiful once you're done with it. And so there is this high level of satisfaction for some foresters in working with that larger timber. They didn't really want to be working with these small trees because there wasn't as much of an immediate payoff in my estimation. But in my eyes, it was almost like they were playing with somebody else's project. I talked in a previous video about how you can't really change the value of your forest right now because the forest as you see it is a result of past activities. So if you're going in and playing with a stand of large timber, you're kind of playing around with those past activities. I wanted my own project. I wanted my own mark on the forest in the world. And so I was fascinated by going in and altering the trajectory of these stands from a very young age. But there was basically no competition in the industry to do this. So within a few years of graduating college, in the company I was working for, I was actually the manager of these timber stand improvement activities. And at the time, it made me feel pretty good about myself, but really it was just about the inadvertent arbitrage opportunity I had created. And that is in an environment full of professional foresters, professional, trained, educated, experienced foresters. So just imagine the arbitrage opportunities with people who don't know better. Yes, indeed, when you go on the market and look at some of these woodlots that are cut over, that are just saplings that to the untrained eye look like a total disaster, they're very much unloved, and that's because there's less competition for them. If somebody's trying to buy a woodlot to build a camp, they want beautiful timber. If somebody's looking for hunting ground, they probably at least want some diverse habitat, which includes some large timber. But if you're looking purely for a timberland investment opportunity, it should be less about how big the timber actually is and what the potential value and production of that land is in actuality. And that requires a little bit of visual creativity. You have to be a little bit of a visionary, and I think in the broader market that can be a bit rare. Now, obviously right now the real estate market's a total mess. If you're paying attention in some areas, it is starting to fix itself. And there are some parts of the country where it's totally normal. But in general, everything in real estate is crazy right now. But if you do look at those cutover parcels and you have some education about what to look for and you have some visual creativity skills, you can find for yourself some excellent arbitrage opportunities. Or alternatively, if you already own land and there are a variety of conditions on that land and you kind of want to know where to focus your time, consider this video. Maybe your best opportunities are in your smallest trees. But of course, to execute on this properly, you have to know what you're doing, you have to have some education, and you have to be able to see the forest for the trees. So if you want to learn more, if you want to understand the types of things you should be looking for and the types of decisions to be making, you can download my free book, and I'm going to leave a link for that in the comments and in the description. And what it is, it's kind of an overview of forestry and forest management. It explains kind of the principles behind forest management, silvicultural principles, and then goes into some of the measurements that you need to understand how to make in order to best manage your forest. And of course, at the end, we have some volume tables and other things like that to better help you. So if this video kind of piques curiosity, and especially if you're looking for land, like it's basically non-optional if you're looking to buy land, go and read that book. It's going to help you find that right parcel. All right, that's all for now. I'll catch you later.